Hey everyone, this is Scott from Texas Prepper Projects. So this is going to be something very different than I've done in the past, but something really important happened this week. So for those of you who have not watched the news, a few days ago there was a deliberate attack on the power grid in North Carolina. We'll stay out of politics, whatever, but the fact of the matter is, in all likelihood, someone deliberately shot at one or two transformers in North Carolina and took out power to 40, 50,000 people. This should be a big wake-up call to everyone. You can no longer say it can't happen here, because it can happen anywhere. About politics, terrorism, etc., it's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that emergencies can happen to anyone, any place, anytime. Weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzard. No one is protected from any of those sorts of things. So I want you to take a second and ask yourself right now, if this happened to you where you live and your power went out and wasn't going to come back on for a week, what would you do? How would your life be right now if the lights turned off, and we're not going to come back on for a week? I say a week because that's what they're estimating, is that it'll be Thursday-ish before things start to come back to life. The transformers that were taken out are not just like sitting on the shelf at Home Depot. Like, they are specialty things that have to be brought in and reconstructed. So let's call it a week. Just like my power outage video during the Texas blizzard, we were out for a week. This could not happen to anyone. So ask yourself, do you have food for a week? Do you have a way to cook that food? Do you have enough fuel to run whatever your cooking device is for meals for a week? Do you have a way to keep your cold food cold, or a way around it? Do you have enough water to drink? You can forget about bathing, maybe, particularly if you live in an apartment, but can you drink? Do you have enough to drink? Do you have enough to flush toilets with? Do you have a way to get information other than your cell phone? Cell phone towers do generally have battery backup generators. How much fuel is in them, how long they're going to stay up, and does the infrastructure that runs that tower going to stay up? So let's pretend that your cell phone is going to not work, because it likely won't. Do you have another way to get information other than your cell phone? Look at the Nashville bombings from a year or so ago when they took out internet access, and you had this big informational blackout because the internet was down over a fairly large area. Do you have power, or a generator, or a jackery, or a solar panel, or something like that? Have you ever tested it? Have you ever taken it out of the box and played with it? Something that fascinated me when I lived in Florida is that a lot of people had generators, but a lot of those people had never taken the generator out of the box and turned it on. This is something that I learned when I briefly had a generator. There's maintenance involved with a generator. You got to put oil in it, and you got to change that oil, not infrequently. My generator was change the oil after the first 10 hours of use, and then the next 50 hours of use after that. You ever put oil in it? How do you run it on a monthly basis? You know that if you leave gasoline in your generator, it eventually turns into Vaseline and clogs up your engine. So are you doing maintenance on your generator? Another silly thing that happened to me during a power outage is I didn't have the right extension cords. I had a generator and I had my little battery system, but I struggled to find the right extension cords to get to my fridge and my freezer, and I was just kind of scrambling because they were in the shed, they were buried in a box in the garage. I didn't have the right stuff out, accessible for when I needed it. So if you have a generator, have you plugged it in lately? Have you run it? Do you have extension cords? Do you have thick extension cords? Do you have oil? Do you have gas? Do you have enough of both? So now's a real good time to stop and think and reflect. Again, just ask yourself that question. What would you do right now if the power went out, was not going to come back on for a week? I don't have all the answers, and those answers are different for every person. If you live in an apartment, your options are a lot more limited than people who live in a house. I get that. There are solutions for everyone, but the solution is different for everyone. And the only person who can answer that question is you. So I don't want this to be fear-mongering. There's a lot of YouTube prepper channels that are just blowing up with doom and gloom, the sky is falling. I always try to be rational and practical, but this is now serious. So take stock. We're moving into wintertime, so you should be thinking about things anyway. But even if you live in Hawaii or you live in Florida or whatever, when it doesn't get cold, or Southern California, whatever, this is now real serious. This can now happen to anybody, any place, anytime, and copycats are a thing. I think this is going to be just the beginning. So I'll say one more time, ask yourself the question, what would you do if the power was out for a week? Think about food, think about cooking, think about water, think about communications or information. Not even talking about ham radio or bow phones or whatever. Just how do you obtain information as to what's happening in the outside world if your cell phone is no longer functional and you have no internet access? Communications, heating and cooling. How are you going to stay warm in the next several weeks and months for wintertime if the power was out? If you have preps, if you have backup ideas and solutions, have you tested them lately? Now's a real good time to be thinking about it. So I don't have all the answers. You're going to have to find those for yourself and for what works for you and your family and your situation. So stay safe out there.